UFC 2025 is cooked. What happened with the UFC making the fights the fans want to see? Actually, what happened? 2023, amazing fights. We had so many. I think even 2023 we had the rise of Pereira, Adesanya fighting Pereira, then I think the rematch. We had a great year for 2023, 2022 as well. 2024 was probably the biggest year for the UFC, at least in this modern era. I know there's going to be a couple of old heads being like,
man, 2018 was an absolute savage year. No one's ever gonna pass that year, man.
we're no longer living in the old times, we're in the modern era. 2024 was quite literally the best year of the UFC they ever had. Now, 2025, UFC 2025, we are now entering May and we have yet to have one super fight. And it's frustrating to hear that we could have had multiple super fights. 2025 was quite literally the year for super fights. 2024 we just went through C300. The biggest card, the most stacked card, even though everyone pretty much complained about it, including me, that 300 was pretty mediocre, but it ended up delivering. It was a fantastic card, greatest card of all time. Then we went on to UFC 301, which was, it was alright. 302, it was okay. 303 from there, we started to pick up a little bit more. And then now in 2025, as we're going on, it is not looking like 2025 for the UFC at least is going to look great. They're getting outpaced by boxing right now. Boxing, right now I think in the middle of me recording this video, it is now the week of Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank. Entering that fight week, then the week after that, we have the fight week for Ryan Garcia and Rolly, Devin Haney, and Teofimo on that same card. Then we even have Canelo versus William Skull. That fight's still one-sided, but still way more interesting than whatever we're gonna get for the UFC. We have JDM versus Bilal, I guess. Then we have Valentina Shevchenko, Bad Cookies versus Manon Fiorot, I guess. What do we have? June 7. Hey, fight fans, the main event. Merab Davishvili versus Sean O'Malley. Listen, guys, this fight's gonna be an absolute banger, you guys. You guys were asking for this fight. When he literally mentioned that in the press conference, everyone literally booed. I don't know, what are we doing? We literally went through Sean Strickland versus Duplessis, which at that point we were on rematch season, and we still are in rematch season right now. Where all it is that the UFC have a little HQ in the Apex that has a red button that just says rematch season. They're just spamming it because we just got the Strickland versus Duplessis rematch. Then we're gonna get the Sean O'Malley and Merab Davishvili rematch. Then we're gonna get Kai Kara France versus the Elf on the Shelf rematch. And screw it, at that point I just do Tom Aspinall versus Martin Tybura rematch again. Let's do that rematch too. Let's just rematch everything. Let's just give rematch. Then we got Magomed Big Ink versus Pereira, the rematch again. Another rematch for rematch season. At that point, let's just do Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis rematch again. Then after that, after Dustin Poirier smokes him, let's just do Islam Makhachev, the trilogy against Dustin Poirier again for another rematch. We just gotta spam rematches. But now it's looking like 2025 is not gonna be good at all. If International Fight Week sucks, it literally just proves that the whole thing is gonna be trash. I do have a couple of theories on why that is. I think right now, since I think it was during the Pereira and Big Ink fight week, that the ESPN went down and the UFC were pissed. So when that happened, I'm guessing is maybe they're just not making any super fights at all, just to, I guess, tank the reviews of ESPN, and then 2026 when they go over with Netflix, they're probably gonna come back. That's like my main theory. I think the UFC is 100% gonna come back around 2026. I think 25 they're just gonna throw it in the bin. The fights we are not getting: John Jones versus Tom Aspinall, no movement. Then we have Islam Makhachev's team avoiding Ilia Topuria. What are we doing? Yes, what are we doing? The UFC, they need me to run the show. They need me to run the show. What would happen? It would be John Jones the main event, Then it would be Ilya Topuria versus Islam Makhachev as the co-main event. Then we have Kyle Berhailo versus Nasruddin Imavov. We would have DDP versus Hamzat. Then after that, we would have Merab probably coming back very quickly after he probably beats O'Malley or not, fighting Petr Yan or Umar in the rematch. If Petr Yan and Umar fight, it's looking like that won't happen though, but if they do, that'll be next. Just have me running the UFC at this point. It's just bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news after bad news. What? Boxing giving us a fight in Alcatraz. Well, the UFC, we're still doing fight nights at the Apex. Of course, right now they've been separating themselves out of the Apex, but we've still been at the Apex. Josh Emmett versus Lerone Murphy, that was probably the worst card I've ever seen. Yeah, overall, the UFC looks cooked for 2025. Islam Makhachev's team's avoiding Ilya. Jones is ducking Aspinall. Then it ruins like the whole schedule for the UFC. And this was supposed to be the biggest year for the UFC. We were supposed to have the mega fights, and it would have been good. We would have Ilya versus Islam, Jones versus Aspinall. Then we would have just had that little delay with Hamza and DDP. It wouldn't have been too bad, but nope, we're not having none of that. Let's just have more rematches. Let's have unfair matchups. Let's have boxing type of matchups. While boxing actually separates away from that, and it's literally looking like September they're going to do Canelo versus Crawford. Well, probably in September we're probably going to do Makhachev versus Paddy Pimblett, most likely. Then we're going to have probably some trash co-main event with Zhang Weili versus Jander Jandiroba instead of maybe a super fight with Shevchenko and Weili. Overall, because even the fan base now is now accepting just trash. You seeing UFC YouTubers, Bad Time MMA, perfect example. He uploads fights that he wants to see, that we want in the UFC, and his comments are just saying,
unrealistic, man. The UFC would never do that.
We're lowering fans' expectations. What is going on? We're lowering expectations. So at that point, we're just expecting every fight now to just be unfair matchups and then a horrible main card, and then we just have a horrible co-main event. And at this point, let's just do International Fight Week at the Apex at that point. But yeah, those are my thoughts. The UFC 2025 is cooked. Maybe they save it near the end of the year. That could be a good shot. They probably save it near November, December, and then we head into a good momentum into the Netflix deal. It sucks because as a UFC fan, you're just seeing the whole thing crumble. Though they've been saying like pay-per-views were low and everything like that, but I'm sure like illegal streaming probably has like 100 million people watching the pay-per-views. So far, that's what I think is going on. Hopefully the UFC get back on track around most likely 2026. Boxing's gonna save 2025, at least for me. I don't know about for everyone else, but at least for me, they're gonna save it. And yeah.